All right, so we're diving into something that we all do every single day, and that's talking about our day.
Yeah.
You guys are already familiar with English basics, but today we're going beyond that. We're helping you to effortlessly describe your daily routine in English, maybe even impress some folks abroad or at your local coffee shop,
Yeah.
And to help us do this, we're using this awesome Beginner's English podcast episode that you sent us.
Yeah. What I find so fascinating is how this topic, daily routines, can unlock so much in terms of language.
Oh, totally.
It's like this microcosm of English conversation.
It totally is. And this episode jumps right into core vocabulary, like wake up, have breakfast,
Right.
go to work, like the essentials.
Yeah.
But is there more to these words than meets the eye?
Absolutely. Think about have breakfast.
Yeah.
In many cultures, breakfast is a very specific meal.
Yeah.
But in English, it can really encompass a huge variety of food, even drinks. So you can have coffee and a pastry. You can have a full English breakfast, or even just a piece of fruit. It's a great example of how flexible English vocabulary can be.
That's a really good point. It's not just about memorizing words. It's about understanding the nuances.
Yes.
And, the podcast episode gives some nice examples of how these words are used naturally.
Yeah.
In conversation, we hear Cheryl and Sophia, the hosts, chatting about their own routines.
Right.
Cheryl is quite structured, while Sophia is more relaxed.
Yeah, and what's interesting there is that it subtly shows that there's no one right way to describe your day. You can be as detailed or as general as you like.
Right.
And the present simple tense allows you to express that.
Yes, the present simple tense, the grammar foundation for talking about daily habits.
Exactly.
They explain the basics. Use the base form of the verb, add an S for he, she, and it. I eat, but she eats.
Exactly, and they highlight that common mistake of forgetting the S.
Yeah.
It's small, but it's crucial for sounding natural.
Right.
But I think beyond that, think about how the present simple allows you to convey not just what you do, but how you feel about it.
Okay.
You could say, I always start my day with a run,
Oh.
which emphasizes this really strong habit. Or, I love cooking dinner with my family,
Oh.
showing that emotional connection.
Oh, I like that. So you're adding that extra layer of meaning.
Yes.
But what about, irregular verbs?
Yes.
Those can be tricky in the present simple, right?
Yeah.
Go becomes goes, not goes.
Right, and those are often the verbs we use the most for routines.
That's
Totally do, have.
Mhm.
Mastering those irregular forms is going to boost your confidence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The episode also has some fill-in-the-blank exercises.
Yeah.
Which is great for practice.
Yeah.
But instead of just reading them off, let's try something a little more interactive.
Okay.
Let's imagine you're meeting someone new,
Mm-hmm.
and they ask, what do you do in the mornings?
Okay.
How would you respond using the present simple tense?
Right?
Take a moment to think about it.
I love that. Yeah. It's like we're putting the listener right into the situation.
Exactly. And while you're thinking about your answer, we'll share a couple of examples to get those creative juices flowing.
Okay.
Maybe you'd say, I usually wake up early and go for a jog.
Yeah.
Or I grab a quick coffee and check my emails before heading to work.
And remember, even if your routine isn't glamorous, you can still make it sound engaging. You could say, I hit snooze a few times before finally dragging myself out of bed.
Oh, totally.
And that adds a touch of humor and personality.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Yeah.
But the key is you're using that present simple tense to describe those actions.
Yes.
And now that you've had a moment to think, what's your answer to the question, what do you do in the mornings?
Ooh, I'm curious to hear what our listeners come up with.
Me too.
Yeah. I'm sure listeners have come up with some great responses.
I think so too.
But it brings up another point.
Yeah.
Sometimes these getting to know you conversations can throw a curveball.
Oh, like what?
Well, imagine they say, that's interesting. What time do you actually get out of bed?
Okay.
So it's still about your routine,
Right.
But now it's more specific, maybe even a bit playful.
Right. Yeah, it adds a whole new layer.
Yeah.
How would you advise navigating that?
First, don't panic.
Okay.
It's just a friendly follow-up. You could use a time phrase for emphasis, like, well, on weekdays, it's usually 7 a.m. sharp, but on weekends, let's just say the sun needs to be fully up.
I love that.
Yeah.
It keeps the conversation light, but also shows you understand those time distinctions.
Exactly, and that's where the real mastery comes in.
Yeah.
Not just knowing the rules, but playing with them, adding your own personality.
I like that.
Yeah.
The episode also mentions a writing exercise.
Oh, yeah.
Where you actually write a paragraph about your routine.
Okay.
Now, you're probably thinking, I already do that in my head all the time.
Right.
But putting it down on paper in English,
There's real power in that.
I think so, too.
It forces you to think about word choice verb forms, and it creates something you can look back on and see your progress.
Totally.
Plus, they suggest reading it aloud,
Wow.
which is like a mini performance.
I love it.
Yourself.
Yeah, so it's taking that internal monologue and turning it into something more concrete,
Yes.
more workable.
Precisely. And don't be afraid to get creative.
Yeah.
Maybe one day your routine is super standard and the next it's full of surprises.
Sure.
Reflect that in your writing.
That ties back to what we were saying earlier.
Yes.
No 2 days are exactly alike.
Right.
And that's what makes talking about them so interesting.
It's not just this list of actions. It's a glimpse into your life, your personality.
Totally.
And the present simple tense is the perfect tool to paint that picture.
Speaking of pictures, the source material that we're using has this fun role play scenario with Cheryl and Sophia meeting for the first time.
Right.
And they naturally start talking about their days.
And it highlights how even with basic vocabulary and grammar, you can have a real conversation. Yes.
It's like they're giving you a blueprint
Totally.
for those initial interactions.
They even provide specific questions.
Yeah.
Like, what time do you usually wake up? And what do you do after work? So not only do you have the language, you have those conversation starters.
But remember, those are just starting points.
Right.
Don't be afraid to deviate, to ask follow-up questions based on what the other person says.
Totally.
That's what makes a conversation flow naturally.
So it's like they're giving you the ingredients, but you're the chef who gets to experiment and create your own delicious conversational dish.
And just like with cooking, the more you practice, the more confident you'll become.
Totally.
You'll be whipping up those English conversations in no time.
I love it. So we've covered a lot of, vocabulary nuances, mastering irregular verbs in the present simple tense,
right?
Crafting engaging responses, even using time phrases effectively.
Yeah.
What stands out to you as the most valuable so far? It's all valuable, but what's really resonating with me is this idea of personality.
Oh, yeah.
You can know all the right words and grammar rules, but injecting your own style is what really makes a conversation memorable.
Totally. It's like the present simple gives you the structure, but you bring the color, the flavor,
Exactly. And this beginner's episode, while excellent for its foundation, it doesn't quite get into that more advanced territory.
Which is where we come in.
Yes.
So let's say you've mastered describing your basic routine.
Okay.
How do you take it to that next level?
One way is to focus on sensory details.
Okay.
Instead of just saying, I have breakfast, you could describe the aroma of your coffee.
Ooh.
The crunch of your toast.
I love that.
Yeah. It's like you're painting a picture with words.
You are.
And don't shy away from idioms or colloquialisms.
Okay.
You could say, I hit the ground running every morning instead of I wake up early and exercise. It just adds a touch of personality and shows you're comfortable with the nuances of the language.
But how do you know which idioms are appropriate?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Like I wouldn't want to accidentally use one that's outdated or too formal.
Context is key. Pay attention to how native speakers use idioms in different situations.
Right.
Movies, TV shows, even casual conversations with friends can be great learning tools.
So it's about being observant and gradually incorporating those expressions into your own speech.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
Language learning is a journey.
Totally.
Even native speakers stumble sometimes.
That is so true.
Yeah.
It's all about embracing the process and having fun with it.
Absolutely. And remember, even though our deep dive has been focused on daily routines, the skills you're developing, mastering grammar, using descriptive language and incorporating idioms, these are transferable to any conversation topic.
That is such a great point. It's like you've unlocked this secret code to confident communication.
I love that.
In English. Now, here's something to ponder.
Okay.
As you continue your language journey, how does the way we talk about our routines reflect our cultural values?
Ooh.
Or our individual personality?
That's a great question to leave our listeners with.
I know, right?
It's like a little invitation to explore the deeper connections between language and culture.
It is, because language is more than just words.
Yes.
It's a reflection of who we are and how we see the world.
Absolutely.
So keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep having fun with English. Until next time. Happy learning.
Bye.